with TikTok.
Are all of these mics on? Okay, thank you for bringing these by.
Mine's all on the back.
You got one
if you
too?
do one.
Oh, no. Is this a good view? Can you see everyone here? Okay. All right, if you all are ready, we'll just have you come up here. All right, just let me know when you all are ready. You got everyone in view here? I just want to make sure none of our leaders get cut off.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'll leave.
I'll move around.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
going to leave.
okay,
Oh, no,
well,
this is not my show.
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm sure I've had the longest drive here, so happy to be down here. My name's Letitia. I'm the state press secretary for the Harris for President campaign and now the Harris Walz ticket. The purpose of this press conference is to underscore the urgent need to preserve our democracy and also to address Donald Trump's Extreme Project 2025 agenda. So we have some DFL leaders here from Rochester to speak to that. We'll have just about 5 minutes at the end of the press conference for question and answer. And then I do just want to flag one of our leaders does have to leave shortly after her remarks, so we'll honor that. And with that, I'll just hand it over to Senator Balden.
Thank you so much. So I'm Liz Balden. I am really happy to be here today, and thank you all for being here today. It's an honor to stand before you and with my colleagues as we discuss the future of our democracy, a future that depends on the decisions that we make in the coming months. As someone who has spent years in public service, I've seen firsthand the power of our democratic institutions to uplift and protect our communities. But I've also seen how fragile these institutions can be and how easily they can be threatened by those who seek to undermine them. Governor Tim Walz understands the importance of defending our democracy. He has been a steadfast champion for the rights and freedoms of all Minnesotans, from ensuring that reproductive rights are codified into state law, advocating for safe and accountable community policing. His leadership has shown that true governance is more than just about politics. It's about standing up for the values that bind us together as a society. We are so excited to see him join Vice President Kamala Harris as her running mate. Vice President Kamala Harris is committed to upholding the rule of law. She has spent her life defending our democracy as a prosecutor, Attorney General, U.S. Senator, and as Vice President. She knows that our government should work for all people, not just the privileged few, and she has dedicated her career to making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. On the other hand, Donald Trump has promised to dismantle the very foundations of our democracy. He has openly threatened to terminate the Constitution, and his actions have shown that he is willing to do whatever it takes to cling to power, even if that means overturning the will of the people. He has already tried to overturn one election, and I have no doubt that he would try to do it again. We must be vigilant and strong, and we must vote to protect our democracy. This isn't just about politics. It's about the future and the world we leave for our children. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have demonstrated what true leadership looks like, and we must follow their example by standing up for our rights and the values that define us as a country. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Representative Tina Lebling.
Right, and I know Senator Balden has to go quickly, so thank you very much. So, hi, I'm Representative Tina Lebling. I am here before you as someone who's actually spent my life fighting for the rights of Minnesotans. Before I came to legislature, I am an attorney. I was doing criminal defense work. Criminal defense work is about upholding the Constitution and making sure that everyone gets justice. And so it's important to me that everyone, no matter their background or circumstances, has the opportunity to succeed. We all have heard that famous phrase about our country being a shining city on a hill, and I think we are, and it's because of opportunity and justice for everyone. It's important in our country that the rule of law be upheld and followed, and that the law applies equally to everyone. Vice President Harris is committed to upholding the rule of law and ensuring that every American has the opportunity to participate in our democracy. As a prosecutor, attorney general, and the Vice President has worked to protect the rule of law. That is especially important now. The contrast couldn't be clearer because Donald Trump has shown us time and again he's only interested in serving himself. He's promised to dismantle our democracy, to act as a dictator, to punish his political enemies. He has committed crimes. We know this. He's actually been convicted of crimes, and he's handpicked judges who are now working to give him special treatment in the courts. If reelected, it is not too much of a jump to say that he will commit more crimes, and this time he will have no fear of accountability because of what the Supreme Court did. As my colleague said, he's already tried to overturn one election. He won't hesitate to do it again. We can't let this happen. Governor Walz and Vice President Harris have laid the groundwork, standing up for our rights and freedoms, and it is now time to elect them to protect those same freedoms on the national level. We must protect our democracy, our freedoms, and our future. And I'm calling on every Minnesotan to make sure that you are ready to vote. We have a primary coming up on August 13th, and of course, in the very important general election on November 5th. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Representative Andy Smith. I'm a state representative for District 25B. We're standing in this district, I believe the best district in the state. I'm a little biased. I'm a businessman. I've started 2 businesses here in Rochester. One, in the midst of COVID, had to close, and one is open and currently flourishing. I know firsthand how important it is to have a government that supports and uplifts its citizens. Our democracy is the foundation on which our communities thrive. It's what allows us to pursue our dreams, and it's what catches us when our dreams fail. Vice President Kamala Harris is committed to preserving the freedoms that allow small businesses like mine to flourish. She understands that our democracy has to work for everyone, and she is dedicated to ensuring that every American has a fair shot, no matter how they vote. I am so proud as a Minnesotan and as a resident of Congressional District 1, where Tim Walz served many years in the Congress, that Governor Tim Walz is on the presidential ticket. Governor Walz understands the importance of protecting our democracy. He's passed legislation expanding that democracy here in Minnesota that we have all proudly voted on. He is a great choice to stand by Vice President Kamala Harris in this election and protect the democracy we all hold dear. We are facing a critical choice right now about the direction of our nation. Donald Trump has made it clear that his goal is to tear down the very principles that make this country strong. He has promised to terminate the Constitution, to rule as a dictator on on day one, and to use fear and division to drive his extreme and, let's be honest, weird agenda. His Project 2025 agenda will consolidate power in the Oval Office and giving him incredible control over Americans' everyday lives. That is not the principles that we stand on. At a time when we need leaders to bring our country together, Donald Trump engages in extreme rhetoric that promotes division, hate, and even violence in our country. And he encourages the activities of white nationalists and other extreme right-wing groups. In contrast, I don't know if you saw at a rally this week, Vice President Harris actually stopped her own supporters from chanting, "Lock him up," saying instead that we win in November at the ballot box, at the polls, not by weaponizing the justice system, not by promoting justices that rubber stamp our agenda. Vice President Harris encourages our better angels. We don't win with violence. We don't win by storming the Capitol. We don't win by intimidation or hateful rhetoric. We win with democracy and believing and acting within that democracy. That's the America I believe in. That's the America I think most Americans believe in, and I think every Minnesotan believes in as well. We have to stand up. We have to protect the democracy that we have. We have to elect Vice President Harris, and Governor Walz. And I know one person as well who really believes that, and that is Representative Kim Hicks, who's about to talk now. Thank you.
I guess I get to wrap us up. Again, thank you all for being here. The 2024 election is more than choosing our next leaders. It's about choosing the country that we want to live in and that we want to raise our children in. Vice President Kamala Harris has protected the rule of law as a prosecutor, attorney general, U.S. senator, and now serving as a vice president. She spent her life working to protect democracy. And we all know our governor, Tim Walz, does the same. From his time as a former National Guard member to now our esteemed governor, he's dedicated his life to serving our country and upholding the values that we share. In contrast, former President Donald Trump is running on a platform of revenge, retribution, and fear, promising, as others said, to rule as a dictator and threatening our Constitution. Trump has said that he would be a dictator when he's reelected. The Project 2025 agenda that he wants to implement would give him unchecked power, not to mention the fact that he's already tried to overturn one election on January 6th. He's too dangerous to get anywhere near the White House again. His attacks on our democracy have undermined the rule of law, and they've made our country less safe. We have to stop him together. And Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Walz will not only uphold our democracy, but they will strengthen it. It will bring us together to protect the rule of law and to create a vision of our country that's better for ourselves and our children. That's why we need to work together to elect them in November.
Quick question, as Walz is now on the ticket this week, that is the big topic this week. A lot of Republicans are using the way that Walz handled the riots following George Floyd's death. What is your response to this?
You want to take it, Tina?
We went there.
Well, one thing we've learned in the legislature, all of us, is that Republicans will say anything that they think will have traction, whether it has any truth or not. What happened in Minneapolis was a pretty big and pretty surprising occurrence. And to my eyes, Governor Walz handled it about as well as it could have been handled. I know some allegations have been made by the Trump team. That's been debunked, as so many of the things that Trump says are debunked. Among Democrats, I think, independent observers, no one blames Governor Walz for what happened. That's, I would say, a completely partisan allegation. The other thing I would say is every emergency that happens, and I think a lot about the COVID pandemic and what happened. I very much lived through that, and I chair the health committee, by the way, and was chairing the health committee in the Minnesota House during the COVID pandemic. So I had a really close view of Governor Walz and his handling of that emergency. Now, we can always look back and try to second guess what somebody did in the moment in an emergency. But to my eyes, Governor Walz did about as good a job as anybody could have done with the little bit of information that we had at that time. He was very steadfast in listening to the experts. He took a lot of unpopular positions, but always because he had his eyes on preserving the health and lives of Minnesotans. And I think the same thing is true of the other emergency that you initially asked me about, the riots and what was happening in Minneapolis. It's easy to look back and pick apart, oh, if you could have done this. I think he exhibited a lot of leadership in that moment and did about as well as anybody could have done, given, we can all look back and wish we had, different resources in place at the beginning or whatever, but the reality is that leadership is about doing in the moment and moving forward with the best information you have. And I do think, in terms of handling emergencies, taking actions that are important to take, he is right there and a really great leader.
Mm-hmm. And it's been touched on a couple times throughout the press conference, but plain and simple, why should Americans trust Walz to be potentially their next VP?
Walz has been very trustworthy as a leader. He is a person who, even in these difficult, really divisive times, he's always really tried to bring people together. It's been pretty hard to succeed at that, given the times, but he is a person who's always trying to put the interests of the people first. He is really a man of the people, and I think that the country is starting to really see this, that his origins, he's not a big shot. He's never been a guy who's all about being a big shot. He's a guy who's always been about doing what he thinks is the best for the people that he's leading and trying to bring people together and point them in the right direction. So in terms of being trustworthy, I think he's absolutely trustworthy.
So you all kind of mentioned how if Trump is elected president, he would dismantle the democracy and kind of consolidate power. Are there any specific agenda items for his 2025 agenda that makes you really think that alarms you all?
Does anyone else
I
want
can take, yeah, I'll be quick because that could be a long answer.
Yeah.
I also want to add to the last question that it's just interesting to note that Governor Tim Walz has more executive experience than Donald Trump has and more legislative experience than J.D. Vance has in a single person. He's much ready for the office as a vice presidential candidate than either of the other options on the Republican ticket. To that question specifically, there's a wide swath of Project 2025 things that are concerning. Everything from mobilizing the military to deport people who are currently living in the United States that Donald Trump doesn't think should be living in the United States. Who knows what that will trigger throughout various states. The limited use of mifepristone and trying to extremely limit people's choices of when and how they want to start a family, and reproductive justice, as well as expanding the power itself of the Oval Office, truly to a level not seen since we had monarchy in this land in 1776. So I think all Americans, when they hear about Project 2025, are scared of what could happen there. And those people who aren't scared, I think, haven't heard enough about Project 2025.
Along that line, why is it if Trump is such a threat, that up until recently, Trump, in terms of the polls, has been actually looking ahead of Biden, and it looks like now things are a little bit uncertain. But if such a threat, why do so many people are willing to, or showing through the polls that they were willing to vote for him? Is there an explanation for that, or is it that some people don't necessarily buy into what some might say is the overheated rhetoric against Trump?
I'll be brief, and then we'll see if anybody else wants to say that. I will say it's not just rhetoric. We have had 4 years of Donald Trump, and we saw what that did to our country, and we were much worse off. The following question, why are people attracted to that? I think it's fair to say that people are, when they are scared or not sure or having a tough time, they look for answers. And I think Donald Trump, he lies about what those answers are, but he does it very brashly, and so people are drawn to that. But I think as we are seeing, as you said, in the last couple of weeks, since Kamala Harris has started to give true answers and true unity and really bring the country together, that when people see what actual solutions can be, they flock to that as well. And I think they will flock to the Harris-Walz campaign.
Sorry, to add to that, you said we were much worse off underneath the Trump administration. Can you elaborate on that?
In 2020, when President Biden took over, we were in the midst of a completely bundled COVID pandemic. People were literally dying because there wasn't a clear and obvious way forward for the country. Biden took over and gave us that clear country and literally saved lives. The economy was in the tank. Unemployment was the lowest it's been in decades. We can go, stock market was as low as it had been again in years. There's a lot of things we could talk about there, but I think Biden, with Kamala Harris as vice president, steered a course for us and allowed us a chance to heal and recover from that. And I think hopefully soon to be President Harris will continue that job.
We have room for one more question.
For Southeastern Minnesota voters, why should they head to the polls? I mean, what's at stake here locally? What issues would be impacted if they see a Trump administration go to the White House again?
Well,
I feel like I'm hogging the stage.
Yeah, I know, and one thing that I just wanted to remind folks of, and it really goes to the question too about what is at stake. Remember when Trump was president and there would be a natural disaster in some part of the country, he would be like, oh, is that a state that's for me? Is that a governor that's on my side? You know, this is a role of the federal government, the role of the president when we have a natural disaster is to help those Americans. We're all Americans. When we have a tornado and we have a hurricane, we have a lot of natural disasters going on now in our country because of the climate emergency, I mean, worldwide actually. And so do we want to go back to a time when the president looks at us when we've had a tornado, a flood, whatever it is, and says, oh, did you vote for me? Should I send you the aid? No, that's a scary prospect. That's just one small piece of what is at stake in this election. Having a president who is going to help and bring the resources of the federal government to bear to help Americans when we need it without asking who we voted for.
Can I just add 2 cents to that? So just very briefly, as we talk about what's at stake, you know, first and foremost, I would say our democracy, as we all spoke about here this morning, making sure that we are not only protecting our democracy, but expanding it. And there is a clear contrast between what that looks like in a Harris-Walz administration and what Donald Trump has said he wants to do and dismantle the Constitution and be a dictator. The other thing I would say is, you know, what's at stake, it's our future. And we are seeing that now as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are out, you know, talking to people across the country and really painting that picture and talking about that vision of what our future could be. And people are drawn to that. It's our freedoms. It's our freedom to be safe in our community, safe from gun violence. It's our freedom to have, you know, bodily autonomy, make decisions about our health care. It's the freedom to have access to health care. It's the freedom to have safe communities in terms of climate change. And so all of those things are on the ballot, and you know, those are the stakes for the future. And the last thing I would say is, you know, we are talking about how important it is to cast your vote, and that is 100% true. That's important on the primary day next Tuesday, and that's important in November. But democracy isn't just about casting a vote. It's bigger than that. It's about being engaged and being involved. And you know, there's many aspects to democracy, and voting is just one piece of those. Thank you.
Okay, I will just say one very quick thing about why should Minnesotans come to the polls in November. And I mentioned a little earlier, but for me, it's about our children and it's about our future. And when we look at what Project 2025 wants to do to education, it is dismantling the education system. It is looking at voucher programs. It is looking at removing all of that. And what people don't seem to understand about that or don't seem to get, and this is in alignment with everything that Trump did when he was in office, defunding Special Olympics, mocking reporters with disabilities, telling his own family member who had a child with a disability that maybe it would just be better if that person wasn't here anymore. Vouchers take away idea. They take away the rights of children with disabilities to be educated, full stop. And so for me as a parent and as somebody who has championed people with disabilities my entire life, the idea that we have a national candidate saying, I mean, all those people with disabilities, it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. People with disabilities are equal community members. They are part of our community, and children with disabilities deserve a free and appropriate public education. So for me, that piece of 2025 is terrifying. The idea that we would take away the rights of an education to children with disabilities is terrifying. And I don't know any Minnesotan who thinks that's the way we should behave.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we'll conclude here. Thank you.